What are you talking about? What are you investing in that is maybe your first bet?
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting time because we've kind of been doing a lot of this work in the background, and now the time seems to have really come.
Welcome to Billboards, Bets, and a Bit of Booze. I'm your host, Jonathan Gudai, co-founder, CEO of Adomni. Here with Karim Kanji from Broadsign, head of sales of the Americas.
Yeah.
For Broadsign. Welcome.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure, as always. It's always great to see you. Try and get with you every time I'm in town, so we're happy we could make this happen.
Definitely. And you're here in Vegas for, is it a conference? Is that what brought you in this week?
Yeah. We're here for a conference called Grocery Shop. So we first started attending about 3 years ago. Okay. It's a show that brings brands, retailers, solution providers, particularly technology, kind of all together. And it's a fun show.
Yeah.
Great show. Yeah.
Definitely want to hear about that. But before we get into that side of things, we have a tradition on this podcast of having a little Vegas action. So we're going to spin up a roulette wheel. Okay. And I don't know if you are a gambling man.
Not so much, but if I were to, it would be roulette.
It would be roulette. So you have 4 bets, $100, and you can choose numbers, colors, rows, whatever you want to do.
All right.
Okay, so we're definitely heaving up on the first third of this
the first
side. Let's see. Are you going to be the first guest on the podcast?
Are you actually going to pay me the money, though?
No, you're not. All right. Black number 17. Well, you'll have to come back and see if you can try your luck again.
I'll try my luck tonight.
Or 100 wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the moral of the story.
Maybe that's just it.
Okay, so let's see what we have here.
God.
This is a Comet Rising.
Okay.
Bourbon. Are you a bourbon guy?
I'm more of a Japanese whiskey and Irish whiskey guy.
Me too. A little too sweet.
A little too bourbons, yeah. But always happy to try it out. And
awesome.
Well,
cheers.
Cheers, Jonathan.
Thanks for coming to the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So on this podcast, we like to talk a lot about the bets that you're placing both in your professional career at Broadsign, the bets that your company, Broadsign, is making, and also just the industries that you serve, what you believe is sort of like the next generation.
Sure.
And how you're contributing to that.
Sure.
But before we dive into some of those things, a little context. So Adomni and Broadsign have been partners for I think almost 5 years now.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it certainly is has been a long-standing partnership. But for those listeners who may not know of Broadsign, maybe you can tell a little bit about the company.
Sure.
And also talk about your role at Broadsign and what your remit is.
We're a technology company, a software development company. 75% of our employees are on the technology side. So, our giving an idea, our America's sales team is like 3 people. Well, 5 if you include the SDRs, but it's just 3 of us that are going out into market. So we really do focus on the technology, and I think this is where we've been able to work very well with Adomni. When we started putting our CMS into the field, we had a lot of uptake, and now we're the global leaders in out-of-home.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I'm pretty sure from a digital signage, digital home perspective, there's nobody that has more screened endpoints under management, if you will, than Broadsign. Is that correct?
Yeah, on our CMS, yeah. So we estimate it's about 65% of the global market.
Wow.
That is running the Broadsign CMS.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
How many countries are we talking?
80, last count, 82, 83?
83 countries.
Yeah. So, actual, like a real global footprint.
Huge.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
We're the company you don't know that you see us kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah, behind the scenes, running it all.
Yeah, and this is what we do best, is providing a very stable environment for out-of-home media owners to be able to run their business, because their whole reason for existence is to sell those assets, right?
Help them monetize, help a media owner, billboard owner, screen owner actually profit more and deal less with headaches around technology and content management. So.
Exactly. And that's also the genesis of our partnership with Adomni as well, because you provide that opportunity for them to monetize, to brands to actually access that inventory and agencies to access that inventory. So, that's where that symbiosis between Adomni and Broadsign has been very successful. And, we hope to have many more years of success with you guys. So.
talk about a little bit about this. What brings you to Grocery Shop? What are you talking about? What are you investing in that is maybe your first bet as a company on how that growth continues to kind of be accelerated?
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting time because we've kind of been doing a lot of this work in the background, and now the time seems to have really come. And this, we've been going to Grocery Shop, and for those of you who don't know Grocery Shop, it's I think we talked about it earlier. It's a show.
Place to get your Cheerios, right?
Yeah.
No.
Well, they got samples, so
Grocery Shop,
you do walk away with some samples.
Yeah.
Which is great. But no, it is a show that brings together retailers, brands, and technology providers together in one space to look at innovation in the retail space, specific to grocery, but retail in general. So,
Okay.
one of the biggest evolutions, and I'm sure anybody in the advertising industry who's watching this will know, is retail media. It's it's all started with Amazon shifting from a model of selling merchandise to a model of selling media. They basically became the Google of retail.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So it was all about, sponsored, listings and marketplace and they derive upwards of $40 billion a year of revenue just from this. So it's real estate that they already had that they've taken and they've monetized. They shifted from becoming a retailer to a media company. And Walmart countered, once they started to see this model kind of roll out with the acquisition of Jet.com. And that formed the basis of Walmart's play into how do they monetize their e-commerce real estate. They'd already been doing it a little bit in store, but we'll talk about why that's shifted and changed it a lot. But and this kicked off the race. So now all of the major retailers have what we call or what's termed a retail media network. This is a piece of their business that is dedicated to media, to monetizing their real estate. Right now it's digital.
Right.
And you see it all the time, right? You go to walmart.com and you type in cookies and Oreos is going to pop up. And there's reason for that.
Right.
Oreo is paying a lot of money for that.
Right.
Now, retailers have been doing this in store for a long time. It's termed shopper marketing, which is the reason why you see Campbell's soup at eye level. That's not by accident. They pay the retailers for that. There's a reason why the coupons you get are the coupons you get. It's not because the retailers are overstocked on that item. It's because the brand is paying.
Incentives for a consumer and also just awareness for that particular brand in a sea of competing products.
Exactly. So how do you get your brand out there? The end cap is valuable real estate, and it's those products are there for a reason.
Right.
And so retailers know this. It's not a surprise, but what's really been happening is the astronomical growth in retail media. So we've seen explosive growth over the last 3 years. A lot of it kicked off by COVID, when people were shifting to more digital ways of buying the products that they needed for obvious reasons. But it's going to be $100 billion plus revenue pool now, retail media for next year.
So the $100 billion is the sum of the amount of money that brands who are found on the website or in the store are investing in advertising or promotional elements to companies who run the retail media networks, right? So you've got Amazon, you've got Walmart, you've got Kroger. You take all these retail media networks, sum them up, and this year, 2023, $100 billion is going to be spent.
Yeah,
where if you take like 5 years ago, where was that number?
I haven't somewhere probably less than 10 million, less than 10 billion.
Sub 10. So
yeah, and probably the only person or the only people who were doing it was Amazon.
Yeah.
It was fledgling at the time. The growth trajectory of retail media is really being termed the third wave of digital advertising. The first being display, the second being social, now the third being retail media. And retail media will grow. It's growing much faster than any other media channel that's out there. Now, there's a reason for that. Retail media does rely on traditional digital channels. So you have to have a website. Right?
Sure.
And you have to have an app, and you have to have these things.
Right. And scale. Yeah, you need to have scale.
Totally.
At the end of the day, the brands are going to go where the eyeballs are and 100%. Where the data is that can justify that. So the bet that you guys are making that brought you to Grocery Shop, how does Broadsign fit into that sort of current and future state?
you said it, right? You said scale. Yes, people go to Walmart.com. Yes, people go to Target.com or HomeDepot.com or BestBuy.com or whatever. Only 10% of those people or 15% of those people, or at best 20% of those people actually transact online. So 80% of those impressions of shoppers are in store. And so you've hit these audience eyeballs with touch points or with cadences through this shopper journey. What happens when they walk through the door? Right. Into the store. How do you complete that last mile? How do you appeal to these consumers when they're actually in the process of adding items to their cart?
Right.
And we call that the add to cart moment. And this is one of the things where I think we can bring our as an industry, as the out of home industry, our experience in delivering messages contextually. In places where people are outside of their home, whether that be the local shopping center, whether that be on the subway, whether that be driving down the road, whether that be in the cinema. These are all opportunities to reach these audiences. And the greatest thing about our industry, and this, is the impact. And you do this, right?
Sure.
You have something.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Like I don't even want to explain what it is just for everyone, or if everyone knows. I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
No, you go ahead. I wanted to hear about this because this is really cool. Like what you've been doing with this new platform.
Yeah. No, I mean, the extensibility of social, retail media, video into the physical world, and bringing together better content moments where it's not necessarily I want to sell you something, but it's I want to influence your behavior in some way, and that authenticity. So there's the element of what you put on the screen. Like Broadsign has built this huge network and is growing this network, which is probably part of what you're doing here today. But it's not just what you have, it's what you do with it, right?
That's the thing.
And so if you're a consumer that's within walking distance of a product and you have your phone in your hand, but you are there for a purpose. You're there in a shopping mindset. You're there to buy. You've got your wallet in your hand or in your purse, and you're ready to go spend some money to go in and get what you want. The idea that you can say, hey, there's a Reese's, like a new Reese's product, or this bourbon that's on a shelf that has 50 other bourbons has some quality, Comet Rising. Oh, okay, maybe we'll try that. It's something new, whatever. I think that those moments and the ability to reach people there is kind of what we're collectively working on. But consumers' bullshit radar are so high.
It's crazy.
That if you just throw this bottle up and just say sale 25 cents off, whatever, not 25 cents, but some percentage off, versus you have maybe a creator that's putting something that they're freaking out about what this thing does, or it makes you smile, laugh. And maybe there's a logo of TikTok that's on there that's like, oh, this is actually originating on TikTok. And whether I saw it on Instagram or I saw it on TikTok or I saw it in the real world, I'm noticing it.
Yeah. And that's
being influenced by it.
This is the biggest thing because in the industry, in the advertising industry and media industry, it's content is king, right?
Yeah.
Context is everything.
Yeah.
The content is really important, but the way that you present it, like you mentioned, when it's presented, how it's presented, that context is really, really important. And this is what we're doing. It was in the past traditionally. You're talking about digital signage, which is the very, very most basic way of throwing image or video into your store or into your environment. So you're hanging a screen on a wall, and you've probably got. I mean, in the old days, it was like DVDs. That was the genesis of like the Walmart
infomercials or just basic logos and products being featured on a
screen. And then you're graduating to USB keys. Great, fantastic. Okay, cool. Now you've maybe got some kind of cloud-based thing. Great, it's playing 1 through 6. This piece of content, this piece of content, whatever. The difference now is. Think about a moment where your point of sale system tells you that you've got, you're overstocked on avocados, and those avocados have an expiry date. And it's the weekend, and maybe it's a nice day outside, so you're kind of people barbecuing.
Yeah.
And rather than the traditional way of moving this product, which is price promotion, 2 avocados for $5.
Right.
So that's going to eat into your margin. The margin's already low enough on groceries. Now, you could do that as a way to do it. A better way to do it, and a more effective way of doing it, is throw up a recipe for guacamole and have that be sponsored by Avocados from Mexico.
Right.
And transact that programmatically. And through the pipes that you, as a media owner, as a retail media owner, have already built with the retail media network. That's the more contextually intelligent way or contextually relevant way of reaching an audience in order to move those goods. It protects margins. That screen gets monetized in a way that's not obvious to the consumer.
Right.
The consumer gets value because now they have a recipe that they can work with. Plus, if they don't have tomatoes, where are they going to buy tomatoes? If they don't have onions, they don't have jalapenos, they don't have coriander.
Right.
They're going to buy
All of a sudden, the basket size is
You
bigger.
went from 1 avocado to 6 or 7 items needed to make that guacamole.
Right.
That's where this becomes really interesting.
Powerful force.
It's a very, very powerful message. And brands ultimately see value in this because their margins don't get squeezed as well. They're getting full margin as well, and they're not giving those promotional dollars back. So these are the kind of the use cases and the visions that we see. The interesting thing is that these technologies exist today. Broadsign as a content management system can do that contextually relevant, conditional delivery of that content. Brands can buy it through Adomni, right? And it gets passed into that ecosystem, and it will play based on the rules that those brands have set and the audiences that they're trying to reach.
Right.
So this whole ecosystem exists, and this is the conversations we've been having at Grocery Shop have been this, and retailers are actually now coming and saying, how do I best do this? Because I've had digital signage in my store before,
Right.
But it hasn't really worked out all that well because it's not automated.
It's not smart.
It's not smart.
It's dumb signage, and at the end of the day, with people's ad fatigue or just the way that they respond to media, it takes the right messaging. It takes something innovative, interesting like that, where they don't feel like they're being sold to, but it's more organic feeling. And you're right. So it does exist, although I think there's probably argument that there could be more screens that can be put out. And as the price of digital screens has dropped, and as Amazon and Walmart have been like literally printing money in such a quick time frame, I'm sure it's opening up the eyes to saying we need to transform these stores into more digital enablement. Is that happening, or
it is?
What are you seeing and hearing?
Yeah, it is happening, and it's interesting because obviously the focus has been on digital transformation for their digital real estate. Then COVID happened, and retailers realized that they need to do something with their stores in order to keep people in their stores. So then it became, okay, how do we automate logistics? How do we get our warehouses running at optimal capacity and optimal efficiency? How do we get the right product to the right stores in an efficient way? It all became about efficiency of operating their business.
Right.
That has kind of slowly been happening over the last 3 years. That's kind of been the focus. Now what's happening is they're like, okay, well, actually, I still have 80% of my consumers coming into my store.
Right.
How do they make that experience really good for them? How do I make it so that they differentiate, and I'm just throwing names out here, a Kroger versus an H-E-B. What makes Kroger so good? What is it that we do really well as a retailer?
Create the loyalty and the reason that they choose that over a very nearby alternative selection.
Right, or even a value alternative, right?
Okay.
Because maybe there's a product selection thing that you do a little bit better. But how do you remind consumers about that?
Right.
And I think that's where retailers now are starting to say, okay, my customer experience, my consumer experience in the store, what does that look like? How can I measure it? How can I make sure that that I'm attributing a certain action to a purchase decision made by a consumer?
Right.
How do I remind them to do that? There's still those old school people like me who look at paper flyers, but I'm kind of an outlier now.
I actually stopped at Grocery Shop yesterday and met with a big platform that's their business has been mostly that, and there's still a lot of people that respond to that, and there's still a lot of brands and retailers that rely upon that as a key tactic.
Absolutely, and it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
maybe until the last of the paper generation kind of fly off into that forever place.
Right.
But there's one thing that can't do is it can't adapt to changes in conditions or behavior or weather, sports scores.
Right.
It's a static medium.
Right.
They're planned months in advance.
Right.
And so if a retailer desires a way of communicating with the consumer in a dynamic way,
Right.
they have a couple of choices. They've got their digital properties, right? So you've got your e-commerce sites, you've got social, you've got application, but none of those things are in the place. None of those media channels are in the place. Arguably, one could argue that, okay, mobile is, but I'm typically not on Instagram when I'm in the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
I might be on my retailer app of my grocery list, and that provides an opportunity, but I'm actually looking at my grocery list. I'm not really looking at any ads or anything, right? So ideas to make something easier for dinner, or ideas to, bourbon. I'm having people over for the weekend.
Right.
What's a great bourbon that I
Right.
or it could be bourbon versus scotch or whatever. But this bourbon ad comes up and it tells me the tasting notes and it shows me people having fun. It is whatever.
That makes a difference.
It makes a difference, and so and that's what retailers are looking at. Like they seem to have ticked the boxes and on certain things that they've decided to change, and they've kind of failed fast on a lot of other stuff. Like the metaverse was a big thing for a while. That was
I know.
Last year's grocery shop was all about metaverse. This year's grocery shop is all about AI. But there is an element of adaptability that these the technologies that are evolving from digital signage can bring into a store in order to allow the store to rapidly respond to changes in their business.
Sure.
So
there's the trend is there. Like the market has already moved in that direction where there's significant money flowing there, but there might still be gaps with certain retail chains on where they are in their digital transformation journey. And then there's also gaps in the brand side of how they're effectively deploying their investment, their media dollars, where it's a combination of online, where sure you get a lot of the clicks and lower funnel KPIs, but then there's also that huge 80-90% of the actual audience is still shopping this way. So from the standpoint of just, I totally get it that it is a dual value proposition that you're going to make more money for these retailers who are looking to increase like what they do what Amazon did, which is transform their business from a retail selling products, merchandising margin that's very small to services or advertising where the margins are really high. Like I get that. What do you guys see as kind of what's missing and what are the bets you're making to help the brands be able to actually harness what exists today and maybe shift from perhaps linear television where people aren't necessarily spending that much time or it's there? What is the actual mechanism? How does Broadsign fit into that?
So, if we look at the advertising ecosystem within a retail environment, you basically have two sides of it. Where you have your shopper marketing agencies and budgets, which are typically focused on reaching the consumer in store, and that's typically done with couponing, shelf placement, those sorts of activations, and those are managed by the merchandising teams within the retail.
Okay.
You have now that retailers are standing up retail media networks or parts of their business that are focused on media.
Right.
You actually have teams that are working with agencies that are typically tasked with building brand equity. So it's reminding people that, and not that, sometimes it happens, but reminding people that Coke is better than Pepsi, or reminding people why this particular paper towel brand is better than this particular paper towel brand, or detergent versus detergent. So that's what they're focused in on. And now those budgets haven't traditionally been a part of the retailers' revenue streams. With retail media networks, now they have. So the idea here is, these agencies are used to operating in a certain manner.
Right.
They plan their campaigns, based on impressions data, based on audience data, which retailers have a lot of.
Right.
By the way, a lot of first-party data, especially if they have a loyalty program. And now those advertisers are able to tap into that data and realize that by placing a banner ad strategically at a certain time on a digital site, a website, they are able to reach more people. what we're doing is we're extending that that model into the four-wall environment. Right? So that ability to find the audiences, based on first-party or third-party data, because typically they won't get first-party data from the retailer. It's kind of a
walled garden sort of.
walled garden thing. Yeah, they're not going to share it openly with the brand. So the brands need another way to plan these campaigns if they want to target consumers in the store, and that's kind of where platforms like Adomni come in, right? That facilitate the frictionless buying of these media opportunities. And it's funny that you said moving away from linear television, because out of home or in-store digital media, as like we like to call it, is also a broadcast medium.
Yeah,
but you're not reaching like 3 people like a family unit. You're reaching like 40 or 50 people at a time, maybe, or maybe 30 or whatever. So it actually provides a much more efficient way for these brands to reach audiences at a particularly relevant time for that consumer. Yeah, where they're adding items to their cart.
Right.
So this is what we're trying to facilitate. Now, we obviously can't do it alone. We have there's a reason why we have this partner ecosystems. Because there are partners that specialize in doing this, and they have those relationships with the agencies. Right. We are really just here to facilitate that, that transaction.
Sure. It's the bundling approach, right? The ability for you to have so many different touch points, but it being activated in the same platform or with a very similar creative with an integrated approach, where you don't need to jump out to different places, talk to different people, buy old school contractual months in advance. That's really what you're saying is the focus is getting more screens, more impressions available through the physical world, but with this hot market of retail media that's 10x in the last 5 years, if not more, it being attached to the digital buys. And if they're buying CTV and then they're buying display and video, and we're talking about, when I say they, someone who's responsible for this bourbon driving, sales in store or online, or Procter and Gamble, any CPG, it's instead of buying 2 things from this group and then going and buying one thing and one thing and one thing and one thing, it's I'm going to actually have 5 or 6 different ways to do that, and it's not just the in-store with digital out of home or retail media being redefined. Maybe you could say even a bar restaurant where this is on the shelf, where someone walks up and the bartender says, "Hey, what can I get for you today?" And there's always that moment you're like, what do I want? What am I in the mood for? And then there was a screen either above you or when you walked through that said that this bourbon is now being put into old fashioned, like try our new old fashioned with, Comet Rising. I'll try that. Yeah. Right? Like that moment at the cart moment, at the bar moment is where retail media is, taking this share of wallet, rightfully so, in a way where it's really effective.
Yeah. And that's what they're realizing, right? They're realizing, like, holy shit.
It works.
It works, but the most valuable real estate I have is my physical real estate.
Right.
They might have spent, 20, 30, $50 million on their e-commerce. I mean, Walmart spent whatever, X numbers of billions of dollars on Jet. Yeah. But how much money do you think that they spent on their physical stores? Right. Like, are you kidding me? Right. This is exactly it, right?
It's why Walmart's the biggest retailer, I think, in terms of actual like dollars, right?
Yeah.
In the world. I mean, Amazon obviously has the e-commerce and like invented that, but Walmart, I believe, is one of the most valuable or biggest companies because of the physicality that they've been able to deploy.
Because they're there. Dollar General, there's a reason why they have 15,000 stores. There's also a reason why they have a retail media network now. Right. Because I bet you that 90% of what they sell, they're not selling online. I don't even know if they have it online. We don't have Dollar General in Canada, so I'm just guessing. But, they're selling it in store.
I'm just clicking dollar. I'm thinking about that as from a clicking. Yeah. There's no sorting by price.
There's no sorting by price.
Dollar General.
Exactly. But this is what they're realizing. They're like, man, I'm sitting on like billions of dollars worth of real estate that I've spent so much money on building and maintaining and staffing and stocking, and why am I not doing this there? Right.
And they've invested in the automated payments when you're leaving the store, where that's like more and more people are going through self-checkout, or even this new Amazon where it's just tied to sort of your thing. So that's going to evolve. It only makes sense that the digitization and then the access to products and brands who want to stand out at the moment of truth, like where people are on a mission and you can actually influence that. It's happening. So really fascinating stuff. We're really excited to be on this journey with you.
Yeah, us too. I mean, it's we've had a great 5 years together, and looking forward to the next 25.
Keep doing it because it keeps getting better, and
does.
because you guys are like the heart of the industry, it only makes sense that you're creating all these arteries to enable more and more digital connectivity. And then for companies like Adomni, where we're really focused on how do you deliver the best messaging, the best creative, the easiest access to this network that you guys have built. It's a beautiful partnership, and
we couldn't do it without you because it goes both ways. And
does.
like I said, high tide lifts all boats, and that's where we want to go. So
definitely awesome. We'll look forward to talking to you next year, and we think about some of the new deployments you've had. And some of the proof points of some of the brands who've been taking advantage of it. Not just the big ones, but maybe even talking about some of the smaller ones as well.
Yeah, in fact, that's I think where the real story is going to be. Is where not only the smaller brands, but even some of the smaller retailers. Is that, it's easier for them to pivot real quick. And we're actually those conversations we're having. A lot of them are with these more regional retailers. So it's very cool. Very exciting to see.
Love it.
Yeah,
awesome. Karim, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for Jonathan for having me. I mean, it's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
We're going to see you in New York, I think.
Yes. See you at the next big industry event.
Good stuff.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take it easy.
Yeah.